Hi there. Welcome to Q&A Wednesday. I think it's actually time that I buy a new tripod because every time I try to set it up, it wants to go this way. Have a really great topic tonight, so hopefully you're all hopping on, jumping in there. I know it's the holidays. It's crazy. A lot of my clients keep canceling. I know, it's just that season. So everybody just take a deep breath. Let it out. It's supposed to be the time for joy, the time for kindness and celebrating, and it's sometimes it's tough to feel that way. So I'm hoping that over the next few days that things calm down a little bit. I'm just excited to enjoy my family. I got everybody home as of yesterday, and I am just loving it. Plus, I'm gonna be a grandma soon, so pretty stoked about what's going on in my life. But I've been reading some really interesting information on processed food. Of course, you know me, I love research. I love the science. I'm pretty consistently reading on how things work, how nutrition, I want to be as smart as a doctor without being a doctor. But there's so much information, and I'm flabbergasted at the misinformation that's promoted and what gimmicks and garbage go on. It's coming to that time of year, January 1st, everybody starts thinking about New Year's resolutions and what they want to do. And I really think people have a misconception of, number one, what realistically is entailed and what their goals are, but that there's really some misgiving there on what things they're going, really what they're going to have to do, what the realistic changes are that are going to have to be made in order not just to reach their goals, but to stay there. The whole, I'm going to do something for 3 months and get where I want to go, and then I'm going to go right back to what I was doing, but I should keep the results, really does not work. And as a trainer and as a wellness coach, I really focus on the life changes that have to happen, the habits and things that we have to do in order to have a healthier lifestyle and how to be an overall healthier, well person. And we're talking on the whole thing. We're not just talking about going to the gym and working out at the gym, because you can't undo everything else if you're not attempting to fix the things that got you there in the first place. So keep that in mind. I really struggle with this whole New Year's resolution thought process, because again, it's so temporary in not only the motivation, but also in the efforts that are going to be applied. When we know that in order to get where we need to go, we're going to have to change everything. I've been there. I've been at both ends of the spectrum. I know what it feels like to be frustrated and think, okay, well, I'm going to the gym. Why is nothing changing? And there's a lot more to it. So I picked today's topic and the question, am I addicted to food, or am I a food addict? Partially from one of the books that I'm reading right now. If you look at the American diet and even what people think is healthy, which I find fascinating because there's sugar in everything, we really aren't eating food and nutrients in order to support our body's processes. We're actually just eating food because it tastes good or because we like it. And there's a whole background to that we're going to talk about today when we talk about food addiction. And Jason just said he just had tacos. Hey, I'm not going to lie, I love tacos and I love food. But you know what? My philosophy on food, especially if it's something I eat fairly clean on a regular basis. If I'm going to eat something above and beyond what I normally eat, my rule of thumb is that if I have to work it off, it better be the best meal I've ever had. I don't do fast food anymore, partially because I know where it comes from, and because to me it's not worth it. I know what the downside is. I know how I'm going to feel. I know what it's going to do to my body, and I really just don't. It's not worth it to me. But again, this has taken a lot of years in order to kind of figure this out and understand how our bodies work and how healthy nutrition really does. Actually, it matters more than the exercise, guys. I hate to put this to you, but when you're trying to live a healthy lifestyle, what you eat can make or break not only your goals, but just your health and wellness versus the illnesses that we can receive. Think about it. Your immune system is your gut, right? It's your gut health determines your immune system. And if you're eating garbage that doesn't support your immune system or your gut health, you get sick. Right? That's how it works. And I don't think that we realize those of us that are getting sick year after year after year after year, it's because your microbiome is off. It's not because you're just dealing with viruses. That's part of it. But it's because your body can't handle the viruses and it can't it can't kill off the bacteria or the virus that's come in contact with you. Now, since I've started eating healthier, now again, it's the holidays. I still like a good, a little bit of sweets here and there. But since I started eating healthier and primarily cutting sugar and processed food out of my diet, I don't get sick. I don't get sick, unless I do something specific, like overdo it, not enough sleep. And then my body tells me that I've done it that way by making me sick. But honestly, I don't get sick ever. So, part of it is just making sure that you're doing everything you possibly can. Now, I hear a lot of people say, you know what? I don't want to look older. I don't want to grow old. I don't want my body to be, age. I don't want my body to age. You can battle that with food. You just have to eat the right nutrition. So Angel says she is addicted to cheesecake. Oh my gosh, girl, you're so funny. Not gonna lie, I have a sweet tooth. I grew up with it. And we're gonna talk a little bit about how our upbringing really plays a role in whether or not we struggle with food. And whether, there are some true serious health and food issues that people have and illnesses, and they just should not be taken lightly. I mean, there's a lot to it. We're really just mostly talking about the average person that eats the average American diet, and whether or not you're really addicted to it. Because I know a lot of us struggle, right? They fall off the wagon because I just couldn't resist whatever. I've had days where I've eaten my feelings. I freely admit it. I know that my body responds to that. I know what my triggers are. Most of the time I can work around it, but there are times that I just, screw it. I'm going to eat that bag of M&Ms. But because I know how our bodies work and how our hormones work and what plays a role, it's a little different ballgame because now I'm educated. And part of it in the beginning, growing up, I just really didn't understand how healthy food worked, how nutrition worked, how exercise worked. And they don't teach that in the schools. They just don't. It's something that you learn primarily from your parents or your upbringing, whatever situation that you're in. And the sad thing is that a lot of parents weren't educated then either. And if you listen to what the government and the FDA will tell you, and yeah, I'm bashing them because they're not teaching the right information. It's all based on who's paying who. And so even if you look at like the 1980, the original food pyramid, such a lie, such garbage. Again, I do a lot of research. I love to read. Because I want to know the science. Like, I don't want to guess anymore. I want to know, how does the body respond? So let's go into this just a little bit. Are you a food addict? And is there something that you can do about it? Now, I've actually seen where people truly are addicted to food. And really, if you think about it, the way that drugs work and the way that food work, it's the same. Your body responds to food, especially processed food and sugar, by releasing dopamine in the brain, which is your feel-good hormone. So unfortunately, your body feels good briefly when you eat the processed food because it turns immediately to sugar in your system. And then of course it, relays that dopamine or responds with it. And so then of course you want more because it feels good. So when people tell me they crave, and that there's something very, very true to that. That's how your body does respond to that. So let's just back up for a second. Let's talk about really what a healthy nutritional diet is. Now, again, there is no one size fits all. It just doesn't exist. Everybody's bodies are different. Your genetic makeup's different. So most people who actually start to listen to their body and how it responds might have a little different choice. And of course, some of that is, not everybody likes every type of food. I get it. But if you just clean it up in general, you're going to see better results than what most people think is healthy. If you've learned to read the back of labels or the labels on your food, I'm just going to tell you, it's really pretty simple, guys. If you are buying it in a box, if it is shelf stable, if it has additives, preservatives, if it is a processed food, it is not healthy for you, and your body will become addicted to it in a sense because of how the body responds to it. But here's the problem. If you look at the majority of the illnesses today, as a matter of fact, I just read some really disturbing results and numbers about how we now have more people that are ill with diabetes or pre-diabetes than are not. If you look at the average American adult, we have more, it's like 53% are either diabetic or pre-diabetic in the United States. That's a pretty disturbing number. And of course, that's the biggest issue is for a lot of people, it's not something that we even know that we have that problem in the beginning, because of course your body doesn't respond with diabetes until later in life. That's why it's called adult onset type 2 diabetes, because of course it takes years for these problems to start happening. The problem is we are now seeing this problem, and all these metabolic issues in children and even infants. And I can tell you in a second how that has happened. But it is alarming that it's an epidemic, right? Obesity's become an epidemic. Obesity is not the problem, it's a symptom, okay? The problem is that we are overloading our body with sugar and processed food, and it doesn't know how to deal with it, and so we are getting sick. You realize that sugar actually ages and rots your body from the inside out. Yeah, it tastes good. There's a whole science behind that. And of course, the food companies count on that. Just really quick, there's a couple of really, really great books that I've been reading. The first one started with a book called The Obesity Code by Jason Fung. Really, he's a doctor. He really has this whole view of how your body really does work and how it's not fats that are causing, remember the low fat craze? I still kind of hear about it sometimes. Well, we needed low fat. That's garbage. There's obviously some things we shouldn't eat, like trans fats and things like that, but healthy fats should be a major part of what our diet is. The problem comes down to, of course, that we're overloading our bodies with carbohydrates. So he really talks about the true science and how your body responds to nutrition. Really, really great book. He also mentioned a couple other books that I have read recently. One is called The End of Overeating by David Kessler. Really, really good book. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. For those of you that like to read, these are really great books because it really shows you what the food issue is and what the nutrition issue is in the United States. And of course, that's expanded to countries around the world because many countries are adopting the American lifestyle, and like you can see McDonald's in like every country now, right? And that is a problem because now we're giving those countries the same issues that we have. The second book that I read of his is called, it's very, very similar to the Obesity Code, but it's more focused on diabetes. Just because my mother is a type 2 diabetic, I know that my grandmother was a type 2 diabetic. So of course, genetically, I'm predisposed to have diabetes. So the second book that I'm reading of his is called The Diabetes Code, which is very, very similar. And I find it fascinating because you guys, come on, we got to know the truth. We got to avoid these gimmicks and the garbage, because what we've been doing for the last 20 years is not working. It's kind of like when somebody comes to me and says, hey, I heard that blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and how's that working for you? Right? Because if it worked, you wouldn't be coming to me in the first place. The other book that and I tend to read 3 and 4 books at a time, not gonna lie. Okay, so Jocelyn says, I need to get rid of sugar again. She got rid of during a pregnancy. That's great. It's really difficult. Sugar, it's one of those things that you can't just do once, right? Because as soon as you introduce it back into your diet, it is addicting. Again, it lights up the same part of your brain as cocaine. Your body likes that. It likes how it feels. But overall, we just know that it is so detrimental to our health that we have to find a way to just get rid of it. If anybody grew up where their parents ate very, very healthy, they ate more, maybe even a vegetarian lifestyle or just very much whole, clean food. Some people don't have these issues, but most of us I remember TV dinners when you had to put them in the oven because we didn't have microwaves. I grew up on processed food. That was just what was happening. It was kind of going through the motions of recreating itself over and over in new ways. And of course, today it's even worse because food is hyper engineered to be desired, right? There's something called the bliss point where food engineers actually go in and they figure out flavor wise. Doritos is a great example where it's not overwhelming to the point where you have to stop eating it. There is enough texture, salt, sweet, and fat in that product that you want to just keep going. And the food companies, absolutely, that's how they know that they can sell you that product. They don't want you to just buy one. They want you to buy it over and over and over again. Thereby, you like the taste, you like how you feel. So we tend to go back and more and more and more and more, right? We don't do that with healthy food. So, keep in mind, number one, that when we're talking about food addiction, notice that nobody is addicted to healthy food, right? I don't know anybody who goes, you know what? I just can't stop. I just eat so much vegetables, and nobody says that. It's not healthy, clean, whole food that we're addicted to. It is hyper engineered and savagely marketed. That's from the New York Times. To us, right? You know, it looks good. And then they throw some gimmicks in there, making it sound healthy. You know, when Tang first came out, you remember Tang? I remember Tang. Never a big fan of that. But they found that if they put the idea of an orange and the fact that it was juice flavored, that they sold so much more of it, because as mothers, you know, we want our children to eat healthy foods. So if we assume or get that feeling that we're doing good for our children, then we buy it. But most, I dare say, all processed food has sugar in it. You know, Dave just hopped on there and said that, yep, sugar is in everything. It really is. Again, you have to go back to going to the healthy, clean, whole food. And that's, we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But the other book that I'm currently reading is called Salt, Sugar, Fat, because that's what the food companies actually do to engineer their products, is they go through and they know that if they remove one, so if you see a product that says no sugar added, okay, great. What did they add to make it palatable? They've added something, because of course, otherwise we won't purchase it. So again, there's a little bit is on us, a little bit of responsibility. Actually, a lot of the responsibility is on us, because honestly, our government and the Food Administration is not going to do anything to stop this right now. You're going to have to make some conscious effort in order to unaddict yourself from the food and to completely rid your family and your house of it. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But really interesting book. Even talks about facts of research that's been done. It's actually extremely disturbing. And you know what? To be frank, it makes me very, very angry. So I get on my high horse. You're going to hear me all throughout January when everybody's doing all this stupid stuff. I wasn't going to say stuff. You really got to avoid the gimmicks, guys. It doesn't work. Anything that is easy, obviously it doesn't work. There is no pill. There's nothing. You have to learn to eat nutritiously. You have to learn to eat the food for the nutrition in it. Did you know that most overweight and obese people are malnourished? Think about that. And again, I can say this because I've been there. I've been on that end of the spectrum, did not understand. And you might think, how can people who are overweight be malnourished? They're obviously overnourished, right? Because they're maintaining a whole lot of fat. The problem is they're not eating nourishment. They're not eating nutrients, vitamins, or minerals that your body needs to process and be efficient. They're eating empty calories. They're not kidding when I say empty calories. When processed food has no nutritional benefit to your body. So your body stores it as fat. Fat is your body's survival mechanism. As a matter of fact, one of the most interesting things I read from Dr. Jason Fung, was that, you know, skinny people who seem to be able to eat everything and not gain anything, not gain any weight or hold any fat, may have an actual disadvantage, because for those of us that gain fat very easily, that is our body's way of whisking away all the toxins and the damage that food can do to our body by, you know, shoving that into fat stores right away so that our body isn't toxic, right? So I find that very, very fascinating. But I know I digress. I'm getting totally off on a tangent. So let's just talk a little bit about how the habits that we have, where they've come from. Obviously, you know, we tend to have the habits of our upbringing. Whatever our parents tended to, again, you know, I went on my first diet at age 12. I succinctly, can't even speak tonight, remember going to Weight Watchers and getting weighed and measured at age 12. And then the night before, we went to the store and we bought all kinds of garbage, because, you know, you want to have that last hurrah and eat all kinds of crap. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to get to eat this again. Like, this is crazy. I never learned how to look at nutrition in a healthy way. Nobody educated, the schools don't educate our kids. They don't. They actually don't teach life skills whatsoever. You know, what's important is how they score on a test. And as a former school teacher, I can say that. It's very, very frustrating to know that, you know, I spent all these years damaging my body and I had no idea. So Jocelyn says that we need to do our homework. Yes. And that's why I still, and I'm not going to lie, I haven't solved it all. I don't have it all together. There are days that I really struggle to stay away from the Oreos or the M&Ms or whatever it is. And that's how I've come to kind of find my groove, and I know what I can and can't do in order to still stay healthy. So back to habits, whatever we grew up with, whatever our friends did, wherever we're spending our most time. If you've heard the idea that we become like the 5 closest people to us, that's why, if you tend to drink a lot of wine, look around. I bet you your best friends tend to drink a lot of wine as well. We tend to take on the habits of the people we hang around most, and that can be a detriment, really, if you think about it. And we talked about the lack of correct education. That first food pyramid in 1980 was so backwards. Remember, like, the biggest part of it was carbs, basically, grains, and that's and the smallest part, of course, sweets is supposed to be the smallest part, but remember that, like, fats was one of the smaller little parts of the pyramid. Again, healthy fat should be a huge part of our nutritional diet. So we talked a little bit about, the things that we see. I remember getting up Saturday mornings and turning on the TV and watching cartoons in the morning while I let my mother sleep. And of course, like, every other commercial was for toys, but then it was for garbage. It was for, like, sugary cereal where, hey, we've got added vitamins to it. It's still processed crap. You can add whatever you want to it, but your body's still going to treat it as processed crap. So, the things that we kind of have been bombarded with for the most of our, childhood is how we're going to look at food and how we're going to look at it. Now, genetics are going to play a huge role as well. I mean, they really are. Again, some people tend to be able to eat whatever they want and not necessarily gain any weight. That does not necessarily make them healthy. Let's see, what would you recommend as a first step to kick the processed food? First of all, you know what, Jocelyn, don't focus on what you can't have. Focus on what you can. Start trying to add new, healthier foods to your meal plan. I don't call it a diet because I don't like the word diet, although it's not supposed to mean sacrifice. It's just supposed to mean what you eat on a regular basis. But focus on things you can. Try some new vegetables. Almost my whole household is on a meal plan, including my 10-year-old, who knows what all the nutrients are for. He knows about the macros. He knows what he's supposed to be. He knows why. He knows how he feels when he eats garbage. So my whole family's on it. And what I tend to do with people is for each meal, and now most of us eat 6 small meals a day, and that's just to kind of make it work for us. Some people can't do that. I personally like 6 small meals because it leaves less time for people to go too long between meals and then decide that they're hungry. Now, there's a difference. What's hungry? That's a craving. Hungry, that's actual physical hunger. That's your metabolism. It doesn't allow you to go long enough between meals where you start to actually eat stuff that you shouldn't be or get into things you shouldn't. So in my house, we all choose a lean protein, a complex carb. Now, complex carbs, again, kind of a topic for another time, but that's going to be things like vegetables, sweet potatoes, rice, not instant. We do a lot of short grain brown rice or jasmine rice at my house, oatmeal, things like that. If you can grow it, I know this sounds funny, but if you can kill it or grow it, it's probably a whole food. Now, a whole topic for another time is, especially when it comes to your proteins, if you're eating meat, you are eating what the animals eat. So keep in mind that just because you get it from the store, it's not always your best option. I had one of my clients just ask me if she could have venison. I said, oh, heck yes. Anything that's grass-fed, wild, is going to be a much, much better option than something that's farmed and fed corn and grain and crap they shouldn't be eating anyway. Plus veggies. We eat literally tons of veggies at my house. That has not always been the way it is. Over the years, I've actually kind of just started introducing, especially green vegetables into my household. Now most of my household will regularly eat something, right? Anywhere from zucchini to asparagus. But it's taken time. So, if you're just starting, you're going to get some resistance, especially within your household. And one of my tips is you need to involve your whole household. Now, I've actually had people that have said, okay, well, I keep crackers in the house for my kids. Okay, so what you're telling me is that you want your children to grow up and have the exact same issues with food that you have. Doesn't sound intelligent to me, right? If you, it's gonna, again, you're gonna come on some resistance. Like if your kids have never eaten a vegetable in their whole life and they consider fruit snacks as a fruit, it's gonna take you a while, but you've gotta be able to teach your kids to grow up in a way that's healthy so that they don't experience what the average adult is experiencing today. So that's really important. So Jocelyn, what I would say is, start adding the foods that are healthy and that are nutritional, that are, they're full of vitamins and minerals. Our body needs those things to function efficiently. So again, if we're eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast and bagels for lunch and, a hamburger and whatever, and I'm not saying you can't ever have those, but let me tell you, when I do have something that's not clean and whole food, my body is not super happy with me. I do it once in a while just to remind myself why I don't do that on a regular basis, and I can't really believe that I used to eat like that all the time. So I've got some more tips for you, but let me, I'm so totally off task right now. Unfortunately, processed food hijacks our hormones. It bypasses our ability to feel satiated, which means full, and your body is a complex system. It's totally designed to respond in a way that keeps your body at a certain weight, a certain efficiency. But because we eat all this processed food that kind of hijacks our hormones, like leptin, which is the hormone that tells us, hey, I'm full, my fat stores are full, I really don't need any more food. Kind of think about it. Like if you've had a really big meal, maybe a steak and some potatoes and some broccoli, and you're like, oh my gosh, I am so full, I can't eat another bite. But then somebody brings out birthday cake. You can eat that birthday cake, right? Because again, carbs don't hit that satiation point, especially processed food. The nutrients that are in there that tell our body we are full don't exist. So of course, when you're eating processed food, whether that's McDonald's, whether that's whatever, Oreos, you could eat Oreos until you're puking Oreos. Unfortunately, our body isn't designed to work with that. It's not designed to stay at a healthy level. It's kind of like if you think of your body as a thermostat. It has a healthy weight that it likes, but you can bypass that thermostat and keep hitting the button and it will keep inserting, right? If you eat foods that it wasn't designed to work with, because again, it's not helping your body produce the hormones it needs to say, dude, stop, I'm full, okay? So, and again, the food industry knows this. This is not new. They're not going to tell you that, because of course then they don't make money. So keep that in mind. Of course, I've got notes here, so I'm just checking to make sure I cover everything. We talked about the bliss point. We talked about how your body is hijacked by the food. Processed food does not trigger satiety, which is, again, is your body to feel full and to know that you're done. Symptoms of food addiction. So, some people just struggle to just here and there just not eat really good, but some of us have a real struggle to really quit eating certain foods. And for those of you who've ever had that guilt cycle, like you eat something to make you feel better, and briefly you feel better, right? You look forward to it, the anticipation, and then you eat it, and then of course immediately you feel miserable because you're like, okay, well, I've been trying to avoid that. Maybe I want to lose weight. Maybe I want to feel better. Maybe I'm trying to really take less insulin for my diabetes. Again, topic for another day. And so you go round and around. So then you feel miserable. Well, then you eat another Oreo. So you briefly feel better because that dopamine releases. And then you feel miserable because now you've just completely undone your goal for the day. So again, those of us who have ever felt that guilt when we're eating food, maybe you eat by yourself. Maybe you hide your food consumption. If you're somebody who, gets up in the middle of the night or waits till everybody's gone or goes to the restaurant but gets take home so you can go eat it in your room by yourself, that can be a problem. That's kind of a symptom of something is a little bit out of control, okay? You crave certain foods even when you're full. Talked about that, how, you might be extremely full of pizza, but then you break out the candy bars and you're still going. You eat more than you intend. To me, an open bag of M&Ms is an empty bag of M&Ms. I already know this, so it really is funny. Like, it can be totally sealed and I'm fine, but as soon as it's open, it's gone. So again, I don't bring those home very often because I know I struggle with that. And I always eat more than I intend to because of course it just tastes so good. We eat to the point of being excessively stuffed on a regular basis. That is a problem. Again, your body has things in place, hormones in place, so that your body knows that, you know, you're full, you're done, you don't need it anymore. So if you never quite are feeling like you're done, again, that can be a problem. Feeling guilty after eating a certain food, making excuses about why you should eat that, maybe justifying. I still every once in a while catch myself doing that. Well, I'm bulking so I can have that, right? I can have a little extra sugar. Bulking, even with sugar, probably not the best idea because at some point I'm gonna have to take the fat back off. Maybe you've tried to quit and you've been completely unsuccessful. And of course, that is such a brain trip to try and think, okay, you know, we feel like we're just completely out of control. And again, I've been there more than once, and not necessarily way back when I was really struggling to understand how food worked. Even now, sometimes I struggle with that a little bit. So I just know how to a little bit better deal with it. And of course, you know, again, most of the time when we're talking addiction, we're talking about unhealthy processed food, sugar. Again, nobody ever says, oh my gosh, I ate so much broccoli that I couldn't handle myself. I was so full. We just don't. Because again, those are the foods that trigger the natural satiety that our bodies go, okay, I've had enough, I'm done. So here are some tips. Number one, you gotta be conscious of it. You have to be aware that something is wrong, that you're eating more than you should be, that, again, and most of us do. Most of us realize we have a problem. We just don't always know what to do about it. You also, please, 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 learn to read labels. Again, I just try to stay out of the inside shelves at the supermarket. I try to hit the outside. And the more that, the healthier that my family is getting, the more that I'm really leaning toward things more like grass-fed and things like that. But you've got to learn what's in your food. Anything ending in "os," guys, is sugar. You know, just because it doesn't say it on that little portion of how many grams of sugar it has does not mean it doesn't contain sugar. There's a lot of loopholes that these companies use, and the FDA hasn't done anything about it. If it's under a certain amount of sugar per serving, they don't have to include it. So how they get around that is they break down and they use multiple types of sugar, and they list them all separately, so they don't have to say it has sugar. They just have cane sugar, corn syrup. They have all these things. Everything ends in "os" for the most part, and they list it all separately so that it doesn't sound as bad as it really is, and that's a problem. So be aware of that. Also be aware of what triggers you have that make you emotionally eat. Now here's my my idea of knowing the difference between emotional craving and actual physical hunger. Emotional craving, of course, will only be satisfied by eating the processed food, or basically processed food and junk, right? If you're actually truly hungry, you know what? A vegetable or a healthy, clean food will take care of it. I've taught that to my kids so that they do know the difference, because they'll say, I'm hungry. Okay, great. There's apples. There's carrots in the refrigerator. Well, I don't want carrots. Okay, well then you're not really hungry, right? There is a difference. And I think for most of my adult life, I did not know the difference. It's something I actually had to at some point realize and teach myself. Okay, number two, do not keep it in the house. You know, when I was first really starting to figure this out, bless his heart, my husband would keep chocolate hidden around the house so that when Melissa was having a meltdown, he'd be like, baby, I've got chocolate for you, which, you know, at the time sounds wonderful, and he wanted me to feel good. He loves me. Unfortunately, it wasn't super helpful to my goals. Much more likely to get into that if it's somewhere in my house, right? If I have to go out to the grocery store and buy it, and it's 10 o'clock at night, I'm probably not gonna eat it. Now for me, again, I've kind of figured out what works for me and what doesn't, and I just don't bring it home. It's much, much easier to stay out of it. And honestly, I've gotten to the point where at the grocery store, I don't even look at it, because I know that it doesn't help me with my goals. Now, if I have something specific, like I'm gonna go to dinner with friends and I've already allowed myself an idea that I can have that, that's a little bit different. But I don't even really like candy that much anymore, because I'd much rather have something way more amazing, right? That tastes much better. Get help, get support, especially if you are really struggling. If it is really out of your control, you may need help from either, and it might not just be your doctor. It might be a psychologist or psychiatrist that needs to step in and help you figure out what is going on, because it's not all physical. A huge part of it obviously is, as we've talked about, but there might be some psychological things going on that you need to address in order to fix that. Because of course, habits don't just happen overnight. Habits take time to develop, and of course they take time to undevelop and replace with new, better habits, and that might take a little bit of help there. So don't be afraid to ask. For some odd reason, those of us that are control freaks think, well, we can do it all. I'm a perfectionist, so I think I should be able to just figure it out all by myself, and sometimes we really do need that extra little bit of help to get where we're trying to go. Next, don't beat yourself up. You know what? You are going to fall off the wagon. That is just part of it. It's a little bit different than somebody who is an alcoholic. Now, don't get me wrong. I really understand that all of these issues are, it's a big deal, right? But unfortunately, unlike alcoholics, we can't just completely avoid alcohol. At some point, we have to eat. So again, you're gonna have to retrain yourself to eat a little bit better way. But at some point, you're going to fall off. Again, I try to stay out of certain foods because I know that once I get started on that, I can't stop. And I'd rather eat my calories than drink them. But I really kind of figured out my groove. Now again, sometimes I have to back up. Sometimes I have to re-engage those things that I know how to take care of that, because I can still get out of control if I'm not careful. Again, put your whole house on a healthy eating plan. What's good for you is going to be good for them as well. And I really didn't want my children growing up with the same issues that I had, not just physical and not just nutrition wise, but even psychologically. I mean, I had a very unhealthy relationship with food. And so I've really had to come to terms with that myself, and then hopefully teach my family how to do so as well. Don't go extreme. Guys, you know what? Don't think that you're never going to ever eat junk food again, because you probably are. Don't do ridiculous diets. There is no benefit to that. Guys, there's so many fads and just, okay, I'm just going to say it. There's so much bullshit out there. You got to avoid it. You got to know how the body really works. Stop doing this low carb. Low carb in certain ways is okay, but stop cutting out carbs. Cut out the crap, right? Everybody thinks, well, if I just cut out all carbs. No, if you just cut out the granola bar full of sugar that you keep eating thinking it's healthy, then we don't have a problem. So, or the low calories. Well, I'm only going to eat 1,200 calories. Okay, then your body thinks you're starving, and it's going to hold on to the fat anyway, because again, that's your survival mechanism. So don't do anything extreme. You can try a sugar detox. Like I told Jocelyn earlier, there's probably better ways to do that. Like start adding what you can't have. As soon as your body feels like it's sacrificing, your brain's going to find ways to try to put that back in. Your body doesn't like to lose anything. So focus on the positives, what you can do, what you can change versus what you can't have, you're not going to do. I don't even use the word can't, right? When I go to especially this time of year, and I go to the grocery store and somebody's selling kettle corn or something outside, I don't say I can't have that. I say, I'm sorry, I don't eat, or I choose not to eat sugar. Or I don't eat sugar. So that you're not saying can't, because can't kind of has that idea of, oh, I can't have it because, it's a rule. And so use words that help you to get you further along to your goal. It makes a big difference. To me, the physical part of being healthy is actually the easiest part. It's the mental and emotional that's the struggle, because again, when we're eating because we're eating to replace our emotions, like I said, eating my feelings, that's the psychological portion of it that's playing a role, not just the physical. So, there's a balance there. Everything plays a role, but you got to know how to respond to that. And then, again, educate yourself. Know what's truly healthy and what's not. Give yourself some time. It's not going to happen overnight. You can set a goal January 1st, and by, April 1st, if you're not there, right, It's okay. Have you learned something? Have you put some new habits into place? Are you going to the gym 1 or 2 days a week that you weren't doing before? It's not how fast you can get there, guys. It's how long can you stay there once you get there. And whatever you've done to get there, you have to keep doing to stay there. So again, that's the reason why really low calorie diets are ridiculous, right? Nobody can live on that. They're basically starving yourself. So again, guys, yeah, keto's great, but can you do keto for the rest of your life? Now, again, I have some misgivings about keto, but again, that's a topic for another day. It's just focus on being realistic, find balance, learn about nutrition, figure out what works for you, keep healthy foods in the house, food prep, guys. I don't care if you take your lunch to work, you food prep. So don't tell me you don't have time. You have to eat, right? I think the number one, I heard somebody say this not too long ago. Oh, it might have been Lori Harder. She's super awesome. The number one thing that we don't know how to do anymore that would change the world, learn to cook, right? Learn to cook your own food. That's what we're missing, because I don't care what restaurant you hit, they are not going to be 100% as healthy as you can cook it yourself. Right? All right. So hopefully that helps. Again, I know I get on my high horse, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We have a problem. We have a problem around the world. And if you are unhappy with where you're at, if you don't feel good, if you don't feel like you're being able to get to your goals, we got to do something different. I just told somebody again today, one of my favorite all-time favorite quotes is, you will remain the same until the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of change. So have an incredible holidays, you guys. There will be a Meals with Melissa Saturday morning. I'm sure I'll come up with something good. I always do. By the way, those tuna egg muffins, oh my gosh, they were like gone. My family ate them so fast. They were really good. So I'm always trying to come up with something quick, easy, and healthy that you can make for your family, or that's portable so you can take it with you. So happy holidays. We'll see you soon, and here's to good health.